missing, people are missing, but that doesn't concern me because we're going to have an extensively larger cabinet than the past. We're going to assign people initiatives or multiple people to one initiative. And then the second is really going to be follow-up. And that's where Joe's specialty comes in making sure that people are doing what they're told. So within the first 2 weeks, I'm going to know whether our cabinet is able to be trusted and followed through. And if they're not, then it's time to elect new cabinet people.
So during the first meeting, we want to make sure that the things that we've prioritized are already starting to be worked on. And so this includes the CMU Voice Initiative. If you visit our channel, you'll see what that's about, as well as just overall visibility on campus. And so we'll look for ways to engage the freshmen during orientation to make sure that they know what student government is and they can get involved early on. We also want to make sure that our executive members and cabinet members are held accountable. And so we're going to start the day we're elected to make sure that they start on these projects. Within our pillars, we have a few priorities. So transportation is one of them. We spoke with Michelle Porter from Parking and Transportation, and one of the things that we want to get started is a super shuttle. So having an airport shuttle service from CMU directly to the airport. And one of the reasons that it hasn't been implemented in the past is because there hasn't been a student there to spearhead this. And so making sure that we get in contact with the right people early on is really important. We also want to redesign the CMU iPhone application, and most of you guys probably don't know what that is. And so making sure that we have a development team on that and that they're making progress is really important.
You asked about exec, John? Yeah. Okay. I mean, just to let you guys know, many of you may not know, exec is the student body president, vice president for organization, vice president of finance, senate chair, and graduate student assembly president. Granted, we want to convene these people at the end of the year, but let's just pretend it's the beginning of next year. First thing I want to talk about unfinished business. So if you look at our platform, we want to talk about media screening, the activities fee. I want to set a deadline for when we're going to get those as a collaborative group. Then I want a discussion. What are our goals for the semester? So obviously we have our own goals. That's for cabinet meetings. But we're going to talk about what we want to come out of exec. How can the president help the Senate chair, help GSA, help them talk together, help the VPO, VPF, depending on who gets elected there, to initialize their goals. I want them to set dates for those goals. They can sort of brainstorm. So then by the second meeting, we come back and we can set up really a calendar and a timeline saying these are the goals for everybody in the executive cabinet. This is when they're going to get done by. And of course, we do other things. I think our initiatives, and Neil can talk about cabinet in a moment, we do through cabinet. But larger things like PR, we'd say, when is the best day you can go and stand outside for an hour or 2 hours, and then try and create a matrix, and then maybe, we have 3 days a week that we're tabling or whatever. But getting those things and setting goals in terms of initiatives and goals in terms of what do we want this exec to be? Do we want this to be the visible exec, the policy exec, and shaping that based on our numbers?
Right, and I know Brian said something that definitely we agree with in our campaign is that we have been running a campaign, but we also feel it's important for all candidates to treat it as if they've already been elected. That being said, we have already outlined what exact positions we want to fill in our cabinet when it comes time to fill them, and we want to have those people in place and ready to take on their tasks and their job before the school year ends, while of course leaving spaces for freshmen.
All right, so at our first meeting, we will want to talk about what's left over from the previous year, what needs to be done. Keep that in mind, and as well as our current initiatives. And the second thing we want to do is figure out who we need to talk to. Just make a list of people around campus, super active students, but also administration that we're going to have to meet with before our second meeting, because we want to be connected from the start. And obviously, we can start these meetings earlier than the first meeting, but I think that that's really important. The second meeting, we would want to figure out what all these people need, especially people that have projects that we want to move forward. And we don't plan to have a full cabinet at the first meeting because we're going to need to iterate on that, and we won't know what's effective until after we've actually tested this.
Can I ask my second question?
Go ahead.
So we talked a lot about raising the student activities fee, but regardless if it's raised, stays the same, where do you see as the number one priority of reinvesting the student activities fee in a new way to get better results for the Carnegie Mellon population?
So to rephrase, where would you like to see your the student activities fee invested in?
Okay, so I think that the most effective way to kind of reinvest the activities fee is kind of on campus events that have kind of a big effect on campus. So things like carnival, things like just big events that people go to. That just has the most effect on campus.
As opposed to transportation to events off campus.
I mean, we would like to consult the next BPF on this. We feel like that's something they would have some information about. We think campus events are important, but we also think not just the big scale ones, but how we can make high impact, like medium, low budget campus events. And these are the things we're talking about, sort of like our once a month outdoor events, partnering with other groups with that, because it's sort of the thing Seth and Joe were doing that. Where there's these really cool big things, and then you just have like weeks of misery in between them or whatever, you know? And there's ways to kind of avoid the misery. I think it's investing in those sort of events, and I think centralized information and calendars and stuff like that will totally help with that, if you know that these other things are going there. I think, this is a weird thing to say, but having experience with Senate and JFC, high per person impact events. So something where, you know, even if it's, you know, it's not costing a ton to bring a little bit of value to a few people, but things where we can really get people together, but not quite on the level of a cake.
So part of the reason why the student activities fee has caused a lot of controversy, I guess, or like one of the problems that CMU is facing is that there are a large number of organizations that are growing. This number is growing on campus. And this is a problem that has been addressed by BP Finance when we talked to her. And next year we will work, if we are elected, we will work with you to kind of look at the JFC process and look at the new organizations that are being proposed. And the people in COSO will work with the VPO as well as the VPF to really try to look at the budget and allocate our money efficiently into running more student events, because that's one thing that could be done if the student activities fee were to be raised. We would allow students to kind of have less pressure to fundraise, especially if they're new growing organizations, and we'd give them the opportunity to implement new events using this money.
So to clear up confusion, John Mark is the person who asked that question, and he's the only candidate for the Vice President for Finance, in case anyone's confused. So I sit on JFC. This is my first year as a JFC representative, and I actually have like all of the AB groups, Scotch and Soda, cmuTV, so a lot of the larger groups on campus that, like Will said, have a lot of like per person impact. And in seeing their budgets compared with some of our like minority groups in terms of like numbers, it's really interesting to see like how much of a budget Scotch and Soda gets compared to like the Latin Students Association. That being said, we're in a very like diverse university. And part of like the student activities fee is to facilitate as many students as possible. So it's really important that we're putting our money into events like AB Concert, Spring Carnival Concert, AB Films that reach the largest number of students. But we also need to make sure that we're investing enough money that smaller groups like minority groups or like GLBTQ groups can get involved on campus, because we are a diverse community. That's what makes us so unique across every other university. Like, we're not just that one university that throws a big concert every year. I mean, we have, I think, like 109 plus student organizations, plus the ones that COSA recognized this year. And I think like part of that is in allocating this money, we need to make sure that we give as much money as possible to the larger groups, like we're talking about, like the AB groups, but we also need to make sure that we're not slighting the smaller groups, because the smaller groups are ultimately what builds like our culture as a community. And I also proudly support increasing the student activities fee.
Matt?
So let me try and understand this correctly. You want to increase, so there's a motion to increase the student activities fee, and you want to figure out how it's best to reallocate that money to most certainly optimize it.
I'm saying regardless of whether it gets increased or stays the same, where do you want to see a transition to having the money better reinvested in the campus?
Okay, I wasn't really aware that that was a part of the student body president thing, but I guess I just don't know. I think, honestly, the question you have to ask is, are people who are not having full access to their student activity fee really upset about that fact? And I'm sure there are people who are, and people who aren't. The people who aren't, or the people who are satisfied and pay it and don't utilize it as much as they would like to, more power to them. The other people, I think it's really important to ask them, what is preventing you from using that money? And really going from there. I mean, honestly, I'm not running for finance, I guess, but I guess that would be where this role would make sense.
Thank you, candidates. Before we move on to more questions, I just want to say thank you to WRCT Pittsburgh and to cmuTV for helping put this election together. And now we can continue with more audience questions. You can go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Ona. I'm involved on UCAS for SoJFC, and a lot of the work that we do in student government involves looking at different student organizations and how they impact each other on campus and what kind of things they bring to all the students on campus. So I believe a good presidential candidate should be someone who sees how these different organizations interact and what they contribute. So can each one of you name 3 organizations that neither you nor your running mate has been involved in the past? One thing these organizations have done well, and one new type of organization that you would like to see on campus that has not existed yet.
Hold on, can I write that down?
So 3 organizations that neither you nor your running mate have been a part of, and what these organizations have done well, as well as one new type of organization that you have not seen yet.
So 3 organizations that you know, and neither you nor your running mate has been a part of, and one organization that you'd like to see.
All right, it's like Jeopardy.
Is everyone ready?
Give us a moment.
I can go. She hasn't been involved in, well, she's a piece of paper. So I guess I can't speak for her. She's not here, unfortunately. She's in volleyball. So I guess that's one thing I can't mention. Honestly, I guess 3, I really like what No Parking Players do. I've never been involved in that. I love improv. I haven't been to one, but I would love to if my free time opens up. I think Fringe is a great alternative to Greek life. I like that. Sure, it's great. Let's see, what's another one? I like HKSA. I like all these small groups because it's a really good way for a lot of international students to get out and be involved on campus. One new org I would like to see, I guess, would probably be like, well, actually, yeah, this is one that I've been saying I've been part of for years, the Squirrel Nutrition Task Force, feeding squirrels on campus. I think, honestly, I love feeding animals. I think there's definitely an audience for that on campus.
Thank you, Matt. Seth and Joe?
All right, so a couple of organizations that came to mind for us. The first was ASA. They've been pretty dominant in booth these last couple years, so definitely see the work that they put in. Next one was the Allies program, so it's part of the LGBTQ community. They do a lot of great work. They actually have a month called Queertoberfest, where they do a whole lot of awareness events, and really do a good job of making sure that they're facilitating the needs of that community. Then the last is CIA. So they're a really passionate group. It's almost like a cult, from what I've been able to see. They do a whole lot of stuff with Buggy, and really make sure that a lot of the little things that go into the success of Buggy is really happening. So we definitely appreciate the different things that they do.
This has nothing to do with my presidency, but One organization that I'd like to see, just because walking across the UC, I see a lot of people doing like the crosswords in the USA Today and like the New York Times, and it seems to be a big thing, especially with like the mobile app. So I'd like to see a CMU crossword